You're listening to The Ripple Affect with your hosts, Cheech and Nibby, a podcast that explores how individual change has the capacity to affect the whole.
From neuroscience to donuts, we're two sisters with a deep curiosity for ancient wisdom and modern knowledge, and we're obsessed with learning alongside you because we don't know. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Ripple Effect podcast. I'm your co-host, Chiara, and you'll also hear me be called Cheech by my co-host and sister, Isa, who those close to her know her as Nibby. If you're new to the podcast, thank you for joining us. And if you've been here with us, welcome back. This week's episode falls under the category of our Kitchen Table Talk series, where Isa and I engage in meaningful conversations with each other about the change we find relevant in our own lives and how we navigate it. We don't script out these conversations, but sometimes they tend to naturally follow a theme or topic. Today's conversation found a pocket in the area of beingness and how we both cultivate awareness in our lives. We explore being versus doing, the impact of Eastern philosophies, practical strategies for incorporating mindfulness, the challenges related to attachment and resistance, and more. And then Isa starts a philosophical interview type discussion by asking how I balance my external goal-oriented identity with a deeper spiritual inclined sense of being. This included a significant focus on self-help and personal agency as I touched on my personalized process of accessing the Akashic Records that has empowered me to navigate my own personal life and professional life more effectively. Unfortunately, in this episode, we ran out of time to cover Isa's take on these same things and so much more. So we're making this another two-parter, but we promise we'll get our timing down for the better in the future. Please tune in to the next episode to hear Isa's side of the deep dive. Enjoy this one. Hi, Nibby.
Hi, Cheech.
I'm so excited to be talking to you. Genuinely, I am.
Oh, that's sweet.
We had a large and long kind of preparatory conversation with each other before this.
Can we jump back into a home treat?
What?
A podcast home treat.
Oh,
that's what I'm calling it.
I didn't know what she was calling it.
We've done retreats, podcast retreats, where we go somewhere and we just focus all on podcast stuff. But this time we did that, but at home. So I'm calling it a home treat.
Okay. I like it. It needed some explanation, so it's not the best branding, but I like it.
So Chiara's pretty upset because I vetoed our beverage opening.
Yeah, our like classic or
signature
little.
I didn't want a sparkle water. I didn't want to waste a sparkle water, and it's not good for our vocal cords.
Yeah, who'd you hear that from?
Amanda Francis.
No, but that's good advice. She seems like she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before, actually, for singers and like doing voiceover work. Yeah. So I have a hot beverage instead. Isa made me a yummy tea. So here we go.
Where shall we begin today?
I think the best place for us that we talked about was like where we both are in our lives is always going to be in some kind of transition and change. And we asked each other like, well, what's helpful or what's going on right now? And I think the overall thing that I identified was like trying to be in more being so that I can do.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about that being covertly the entire theme of this first season of our podcast. If you kind of now retroactively go back and look at all the episodes, they are centered around this idea of being.
Yeah.
And that came from a conversation where you wanted to just do things in order. And it seemed natural to talk about beingness before doingness.
Yeah, because I think we mentioned this before, because it's, in my experience, a lot fucking harder to try to do if I wasn't anchored in being. And since I've put some effort and energy into trying to be more and what that means, to share that, because it on the back end, it's like, oh yeah, that does actually help me.
Yeah, I think there's more ease in it. When you say being, what is that beingness? Because that's kind of vague. What does that mean to you when you say I'm trying to do that more?
So that's such a good question, because I feel like that's a huge topic that I've been exploring. It's not like I've mastered it or figured it out, but it was like hinted at when I started just my own way in, was learning about wisdom of the East. So Buddhism and wisdom out of India and sages out of India, talking about that, talking about, hey, you're so focused on the fruits of your labor, and that's not really what it's about. Or the way to do is to be, Lao Tzu. Or this idea of going inward and having a focused, grounded space that you begin with, then to go out with that. So those were all like pointers for me. So to sum it up, I don't know how to sum up beingness, but I know a lot of the world's religions or practices or spiritual movements tend to point to this is the way, or there's something to this that has a lot of value. And then in the West, there is a more focus on productivity and doing and action and independence rather than interdependence. And like I say, colored the way that I grew up to want to achieve, but then the dangerous part of putting my own worth and value onto those achievements rather than on that I have value by just being. There's an intrinsic nature to being aware of being alive, and that focus of attentiveness to being alive and what that just, the intrinsic value of that, for me tends to look like slowing down and taking care of myself before I go out to try to do anything. And that mindfulness, what that whole industry is kind of trying to point you to, is how do you get off of the rat race, the obsession or neurotic kind of compulsive way of doing things, and come into a more conscious or mindful way of approaching a process that does lead to actions. I'm not saying don't ever do anything, but just that approach has felt more healthy to me. So trying to change into that mode of operating feels like what I'm going through.
Yeah, I've been thinking that a lot lately, that the way you do things or the way I do things is important. You know, the manner in which I do it, the amount of presence and focus that I can bring to any given task is important. So I've been trying to catch myself and asking, how do I want to be doing this? How do I want to be? How do I want to be? And then trying to make that choice in the moment and then act that way.
Yeah. I think that in the past, I've gotten so far into a stress mode or into an anxious mode or into like a compulsive mode of operating that it's almost like a breaking point. And I go, whoa, wait, I don't want to be doing it this way. And that cause of pain is what makes me redirect. And it's when you've gone that far down one road to kind of reroute and come back another way is it's a longer distance and it takes more effort and energy. It's like a taxation. You know, you got to pay the toll to kind of come back on the, what do they call those roads that like are toll roads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have to be aware that there can be that if you're not trying to put some things in place that give you that awareness. What do you think helped you cultivate that, what you just shared about when you're trying to do that now, but were there things that helped cultivate that awareness?
I mean, I want to point to the fact that I think not feeling good has been historically and maybe still is the number one indicator for me that I'm not doing that. So I don't think I'm different than you in that way. Like I definitely can get overly anxious or just feel internal suffering and be like, I don't want to feel this way. But I think the cultivation of the awareness is just making time to put focus on that. I mean, I remember being in school and they tell you, you know, this class, you should be spending double the amount of hours in class, out of class on the subject matter, right? So if it's a 3-hour class, you should be spending 6 hours a week outside of class with the material. Essentially, that's the best way to learn, is to spend time with material, to read about it, to look over your notes, to find adjacent concepts, to create stories, to construct things that around your material that help you learn. And everybody's different how they do that. But I think having a really strong want to be healthy, like a really strong intention to be healthy on all levels and to not cause needless stress and suffering in my life on myself, not self-sabotage, not get in my own way, not go into patterns of dysfunction, really trying to be healthy. I acknowledge like I have to learn that. I don't have all of that. It's not innate in my system. I even have some programmings that are working the opposite, the dysfunctional ones. And so trying to actively get the programming of, okay, this is a subject matter that's really important to me and that I want to know, and I want to know how to do this. So I apply myself. I listen to things when I go on my walks. I read my literature. I listen to things in my car. I really try to marinate myself because I want that mindfulness. I want to be aware. I want to be a calm, functioning, healthy version of me.
Yeah.
Oh, Chiara, I wanted to talk to you about it's kind of random, but I learned this thing that blew my mind. I was so fascinated. I'm like, what? Is that for real?
I want you to tell me, but after the break.
Oh. Okay. Okay, so I was learning about attention and just the like learning cognition and perception class. Our chapter was on attention, and I learned about this thing called attentional blink. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so when you are giving something your attention and then you switch and give something else your attention, there is what they call an attentional blink, which is a 0.5 second time frame that you cannot focus on either thing. Okay, that's like, okay, all right. The thing that got me is your internal dialogue is a stream of attention. So every time you're having one thought and then you're jumping to another thought, you have an attentional blink. Think about how much time is wasted if you have a busy mind.
Wait. Okay, yes.
Holy shit.
What I took away from you saying that was
Don't text and drive. Is that what you're going to say?
No, why would that be related?
Because you're looking down at your phone, you're paying attention to your message. There's 0.5 seconds that you look up and has to take to refocus on what's going on. 0.5 seconds at freeway speeds is 50 fucking feet.
Damn. Well, shit, when you put it that way.
Yeah. Don't text and drive, kids.
100, yeah,
Isa.
100% of people are texting and driving. That's not my joke.
100%.
That's not my joke. That's what's his face? Who did that joke?
I don't know. It's so accurate.
He got canceled. What's his name?
Louis
The redhead?
C.K.?
Louis C.K. has that joke. 100% of people are texting and driving, which is so true. No, what I thought about was the wisdom out of India, but I learned it from Stephen Walensky. He's a quantum psychologist, and it was notice the space between thoughts, which is accurate.
Which is like the awareness.
Yes.
Right? And that's why I've been doing more awareness practices. And that is really powerful because once you ask yourself the question, am I aware? And then that immediately gets you into a state of opening attention to awareness. And then you put your attention onto that awareness, really pay attention to the awareness factors and stay in that as long as you can. And then if you have negative emotions, you can do that practice, really feel those emotions while maintaining awareness and then welcome them. You truly welcome them like there's someone coming into your home that you're happy that they're there. And while holding that open awareness, like making sure that you're aware, you give space to have everything actually be felt while in awareness, because a lot of things just need attention, right? Really welcoming those emotions. I think that's can be challenging, but the more I work on awareness work, the easier it is. And there is that space. Like I remember doing some breath work and having this thing come up in me that was like, the only word I can use to describe it is just like gross, like dark and gross. And I was doing this breath work, and I could feel it like, oh my God, this needs to come out of me, to where I was going to go throw up. And I was throwing up like off the deck. But I had this very clear awareness that I'm experiencing this, but I'm okay. This isn't, I don't know how to put it into words exactly. Like the awareness was so turned on that I was completely aware that there was this person experiencing this thing that is me, but there was something very stable and secure and totally fine, almost like behind it while that thing was happening. And that's what it has felt like when I've been able to be in awareness, know that I'm having this extreme emotional reaction that feels not good, but welcoming it to be in my home of my house. And then knowing that behind there's a stability that is okay. And I think that goes to the talk of beingness. And when Uncle Bruce talks about a deep well of being, like they talk about well-being, and the way he describes it is it's the well of being. It's that deep thing inside of you that's the depth of who you are.
Of what you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think there is a doing that's occurring that comes out of that being, that when you can catch hold of that awareness, like you said, of what is going on is, I think in Buddhism, they talk about that as detachment or of the awarer. It is kind of a psychoactive feeling, not detachment meaning bypassing
or disassociation.
Or not disassociation.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew there was a word for it. Not disassociation. Because that is very different. That is out of body. That is not wanting to deal with
It's a strong coping mechanism.
Yeah. Not wanting to deal with the intensity of whatever it is. So there's a complete detachment, but it's to not associate with what is going on.
You can still associate with the thing if you're detached.
Yes. And that's what I was just going to say. My experience of what you were talking about, my experience of your experience. No.
What I heard you say.
But no, just that there's you use that word welcoming. There's a great word because there's a wonderful acceptance of and safety that it is okay what is happening, because not that I'm not the one going through it, but that this body, everything that makes up me is experiencing something, and yet it is sensationally experienced, but also there's another level that's experiencing it too, and that level that's experiencing it, like you said, like behind it, feels safe and okay that it's happening. And acceptance, and really to me, it's not resisting. It's not having resistance, not wanting it to be different. Throwing up is not a pleasant experience.
No.
You know what I mean?
Done so much.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, you have puked a lot.
I had a hard time stomaching things.
Yeah. You also have like motion sickness things.
Very severe.
Can I say it?
Yeah.
We used to go on any car trip of any distance when we were little, and Issa would just puke. I mean, it was just a standard operating procedure. We just knew sometimes we would get it out the door. Sometimes it just would go on the floorboards. It was just guaranteed.
I think I've puked in every possible like vehicle. And I mean that as like boats, planes, helicopters, trains,
cars and automobiles.
Yeah. Okay, we can get off the subject.
No, but what I was saying that puking is not a good experience. And so it's a good example of that mind-body connection and beingness connection to where, yes, it's unpleasant and I'm okay.
Yeah. And you're saying like the release of resistance, which my definition of that is surrender, releasing resistance, and the image comes to mind of floating in the ocean. I remember floating in the ocean and really feeling that pure surrender and trust. And that thing, that beingness, like you mentioned Zen Buddhist philosophy is that beingness isn't just you, it's everything that you're tapping into. It's all the interconnectedness of everything, that oneness, and that your consciousness and your experience and all of that is the illusion. That yes, you are a body. You're separate, but the fist analogy, you make a fist with your hand and that's a fist. Like, yeah, You're a human being, yeah. But when you open your hand, you're still part of this whole big body. And where'd the fist go? It's not that it's not real, but it's not permanent.
Transitory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The impermanence can freak you the fuck out.
Well, and that's like, they talk about change, and what makes change so hard is attachment. Attachment is really what causes a lot of our suffering. And that's the philosophy of Zen Buddhists, is embrace impermanence, detach with love, you know?
And it makes so much sense to me why I have wanted the security of identity, of attachment, because I just want to feel safe. I want to be able to say, I am an A student who graduated with 2 bachelor degrees and played sports, and I have my shit together, and I am
look
organized.
good doing it.
Yeah, right. I want to have that image be real, because then there's a stability I can count on. But invariably, I've had it be challenged because it is an image, because a whole being is a lot of different things that look beautiful and messy and clean and dirty. There isn't a pristineness to life. Your car gets dirty when you drive it and you have to wash it. That's just the nature of it. And so for me, the difficulty of change, of resistance, of attachment is that want to feel security, to feel safety. That probably goes all the way back to like some psychology of how I was raised, right? I didn't feel safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, and a lot of other factors.
It's a basic need.
Yes.
Safety and security is one of our basic needs too.
Absolutely.
So that is universal.
Yeah.
You know?
So then to cultivate beingness, I think, is an intriguing pursuit, because if that beingness can provide some of the security and safety that you're looking for externally, then you can navigate through things with an internal sense while you do hard things, while you do change, while you don't feel secure. You know, it's like it's that other thing that you can bounce off of.
I have 2 questions for you. One of them is this dichotomy of what we were talking about earlier, of identity and values and goal setting, and, you know, this very human thing. And the back part of it of like, whoa, there's this whole other deep well of being, and this different pace of everything, and different. I know you're spiritually connected, so I know you have a sense of that essence. I think we both have a desire to marry those 2 things.
Yes.
And one, how do you reconcile the differences? And then also, I really am interested to know what things, what modalities, what processes do you use to help you tap into that beingness that we're acknowledging? And also, if someone's never experienced that, do you remember the first times you started to experience it? What were the gates for you to find that in yourself? And you know, there's kind of a lot of different questions, so feel free to
thanks,
reference
Isa.
back.
Jesus,
So
no.
Get back to me.
What was the first one? Get back to you in 4 episodes from now.
Write a dissertation and get back to me on that? That'd be great.
Would be a great one. What was the first one though?
The dichotomy of the
Thank
2
you.
and wanting to marry them.
Man, that is
the bane of your existence.
I mean, I think that's my existence. Like, I think that has been what I've been toggling and looking and
Toggle.
and don't, dude, it's not even that late. You can't go into, every time I start talking, she just starts making weird comments, gestures, and or.
How far in are we? I have done so well to not punk around. But please answer my question.
Okay, all right.
I promise I won't say toggle again.
Okay, thank you. I think God damn it, I knew it was coming. So the first was, how do I toggle between, there it is. How I found it useful to be goal-oriented and kind of external, but then simultaneously have a place of wider or broader spiritual, you could call it, or just deeper sense of being, and live life. Because I've thought of this before, the comfort of being and beingness in that bliss of security of, hey, I'm all right and everything's all right. I don't gotta go do anything too fast, too soon, too much, right? It's like that Thomas They talk about India, like
Mhm.
that tamas energy where it's inertia versus sattvic, which is, it's the sattvic state really is what I was just talking about, like
Mhm.
that bliss. But I've often been like, how do you, okay, well, but
Balance.
where's the balance? Where's the motivation to do anything? I can only answer for myself. What I've found is that from struggling so intensely, not having a practice of beingness, not being in tune with taking care of myself, of cultivating, meaning having attention to what really matters in me, that connection to the all you mentioned last time. Without that, I suffered so much. And so for me, it kind of became evident that I was missing a huge component of satisfaction. I was accomplishing these goals. I was doing these things. I was really achieving and overachieving. And my mental state was one of suffering and pain. So I think the first part of it was, for me, was recognizing the gap. There was something missing. And that was enough for me to then go on and think, I don't want to just keep pursuing emptiness. I want to do these things in my life, career, relationships, whatever, but I want to have a fullness with them. How I am is more important than what I have. Because at that point, I had some things. I could objectively look and be like, okay, I have some success in these areas. Of course, there's more that I want to attain, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like a lot less. And that's where I was like, something else is, there's another lack here that it's not going to get from pursuing that.
I think you have like spiritual values as well that maybe like weren't being fulfilled. But then at the same time, I think like maybe everybody has that.
Maybe if it's something they value,
Right.
if it's something that they need. Well, I said this once, we were having a really cool conversation. It was like, what is an atheist?
Oh yeah. I was talking about how much prayer gives me, that process of praying and turning things over and just my connection to my higher power. I don't know what I would do without it. And I was saying, I don't know how I could do all this without having that. And you expressed, well, my friends who are atheists, they get the same solace and the same support from their belief systems that it is chaos. It all just is chaos, and
That there
there's
isn't
not
a meaning and
determinism isn't a thing, you know?
Yeah, and that's their place of understanding, and it makes it all right. You know, we're organizing systems, beings, species. We organize to have context and organization around meaning is so much of our superiority, not really, but like our functioning. And so, yeah, however it works for you. And going back to the question, how do I toggle? How do I, now I can't even say the word without hearing you go toggle. See what you do.
Maybe choose a different word.
Okay. I'm going to have to now. But the back and forth between those two, I think it was scary for me at first because it required a lot of trust. And for me, trust was built. I didn't just have it. It was being afraid to try a different way. My functioning, to be specific, like I know how to be neurotic and overdo. I know how to burn myself out. I know how to work really hard on a bunch of different things and get external accolades to some extent. I knew how to do that. That was a program I could run fairly easily. I knew how to be in fear and fear be the motivator to go do something, not to want to be judged, not to want to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't know at all was how to, like what you said earlier, surrender. I didn't know how to feel okay that maybe it was going to work out if I didn't do it all by myself. And that took courage. I do acknowledge that for myself, to try to go into an unknown like that, even though I had a sense that I think the thing was the sense of, well, this isn't fucking working. What I'm doing right now isn't me living a fulfilled life, isn't me living in all my values, in my own integrity. I just knew that something had to change, and that's the risk, you know, like, okay, I'm willing to risk. And not overnight, little by little, years for me, because I had to construct trust. I had to understand what that felt like. I had to understand that when I feel fear and I do it anyway, that I don't die, that actually a different outcome comes. And then,
But did you die?
what's that from? Tell me that.
Hangover.
Oh. You quote movies in the most odd way, though. Like, that's not a common quote from The Hangover. There are so many more common quotes from The Hangover, and you pulled that one out. So I'm like, I don't think that's right. So that's a very long-winded way of saying I realize that it's a continual journey of toggling. I'm going to use that word again because it's like of going back into the I gotta do because I gotta just feel better. I just know how to do this, and then stopping that and going, I gotta practice this other way of being, other attempt at being, and see what the outcome is, so that I can build that trust, so that I can try to move forward and change. And it's just it's so fluid. It continues to be scary, to be honest. It's not a stability. It's like your sea legs. Can you feel stable knowing that there's motion?
Mm-hmm.
Can you deal with your seasickness? Can you just find that it's okay, that it's all in movement? And then you can kind of look up and enjoy and be like, oh, look, I'm on the ocean. This is nice. So
It's a good analogy.
that's kind of where I'm at with that first question.
It makes me think of how you do a body scan in your first part of your meditation usually, or I do. I don't know if everyone does that. I think it's common practice.
Maybe explain it just in case.
When I first sit to meditate, I'll just scan my body starting at the top of my head, with my eyes closed, and just kind of feel my way down the front and back body and to
The sensations.
from the top of my head all the way down to my toes. And I usually do my scans quick, so I'll do them 2 or 3 times and then go into listening to my surroundings and then go into my meditation. But I think about doing like a being scan instead of like a body scan, of really taking the time to check in and say, okay, where am I at? Am I in doing or am I in being? And how am I doing if I am in doing? Getting that self-awareness back on track was something that is important to me that I'd like to try and do more.
Well, and I've found, and I think this might have been one of your questions, the things that have helped me, so awarenesses that have helped me to point me to the direction I'd like to go. I track my symptoms. So one of them is if I can hear or catch myself breathing very shallow, that's an indicator that I'm in that other patterning big time. Or if I catch myself making noises or breathing like my mom, I'm like, oh, I'm not, this isn't me. I'm modeling something.
Mm-hmm. What else? Yeah, this is
if I'm moving too fast. This is one that's taken me a lot of years because it means a lot of different things, but in one of the more basic principles, it's literally the motion of my body. If I am moving too fast, if I'm walking too fast, if I'm trying to grab too many things, if I'm writing down and then moving to the next, if there's not that awareness of the space between, right? Like we talked about, it is just that signifier of like, oh, okay, if I start to slow down, that can it's like trigger this other patterning. Because this one patterning is used to doing it this way. And it is a domino thing. It leads to all these other ways. It leads to my thoughts going faster. It leads to my breath going faster. It leads to my emotions. Actually, it leads to me not checking with my emotions. Just railroading myself. Just, nope, doesn't matter, keep going. And so the pace of slowing down my body allows for more space, more time to have awareness. Some of them are after the fact. Like if I feel very fatigued, I've learned over time that there's tired from being up all day or looking at screens or even having an emotional, intense conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There's natural physical tired. We have to sleep and rest. That's just, physiology. But I've tuned in enough to recognize then there's a different kind of tired where I just call my soul is tired. And that has a compounding and a cumulative effect. And I try to catch it early, but in the beginning I didn't. I would notice all of a sudden I didn't have a way of emotionally regulating. Little things would set me off. or I would feel really intense overwhelm of feeling like out of control, or just everything is overwhelming. And it wasn't for a while, therapy and different things, that I started to recognize this is a symptom of an ongoing activity that's happening. It was that I wasn't paying attention to my needs, really. I wasn't having enough fun. I wasn't going, what do you want to do today? I wasn't caring for my inner child. I wasn't having any type of mindfulness of not having thoughts of to do, but just being with wherever I was, because the to-do list was just constantly running, and if it does it enough, it's like, oh, there's no room to be. There's no room. There's just no room in the mind, there's no room. And not checking in with how I really feel. How do I actually feel? Those combinations and other things would just lead to a certain type of exhaustion that was not remedied by sleep, not remedied by one or two fun things. I experience that as depression. That kind of is what that can kind of feel like, but also just exhaustion. So
when you found yourself in those places and you knew you wanted to start cultivating a sense of being, more ease in the way you do things, and time for yourself that wasn't in the to-do list loop, what were you first introduced to? How did you first try and start to get in touch with that part of yourself?
I'll be really honest, and what I can recall.
Don't be honest. Don't be honest. Make something up. Make it sound better. Cut. This time with emotion. Do less.
Make it Instagrammable.
God, no. Don't do that.
No, I'll be honest and say kicking and screaming. This was not I love surrendering.
Like overnight enlightenment.
Good. Yeah.
One day I woke up and I just knew the secrets of the universe.
Or just it felt so good to let go. Like, dude, no. Like that was not my experience. Again, because my entire my identity and my survival was wrapped up in doing things a certain way. So then I think the first thing I had to understand was that the pain I was feeling wasn't danger. The pain I was feeling was transition. And to understand that fear, because I felt fear and pain and failure, to admit if something was wrong with me, I must be the problem. So wait, if I'm not the problem, if there's really nothing to fix here, and I can just be okay, then what am I doing? What have I been doing? That kind of feeling like I didn't have it all figured out. And that's a scary fucking thought. That's a scary place to be when you pride yourself on being competent and capable and got my shit together. Again, that image of me. So I think having pursuing the career I chose, or a path of exploring acting and being in acting classes and having to face different parts of my limitations inside the craft, but also as a human, because the art of acting is exploring your humanness through trying to be other humans, I think it made me face limitations, and that process did start to help me unravel some of what my neuroses were or what my patterns were. And then from there, I think exploring with psychedelics and exploring modalities of healing and modes of accessing the invisible, what do we call it? The unseen, like the work in the Akashic Records, the work of different types of meditations. I think what it is accessing different forms of consciousness, trying to move my consciousness out into different places that I hadn't been before, is what started to make me look at this identity that you formed isn't as stable as you think. And so thereby it is okay to let it go. There's something else that is there if you want to try to explore it. This isn't all there is. Who you think you are isn't all there is. And so you want to be brave enough to find what else is there. And that's, I think, what helped a little bit.
And what helps you now at this point in your journey? What do you think has been most helpful to get you into beingness? I guess the word beingness feels a little bit whimsical.
Yeah.
And I know we did a good job on, previously kind of defining what that was for us, but I think maybe
Or maybe not. Maybe we didn't.
maybe we didn't. Maybe we tried, but maybe just awareness, I think maybe is more accessible word that can maybe bridge that gap, or even be, maybe it is the thing in between the doing and the being is awareness. I don't know how you feel about that, but how do you, at this point in time in your journey, bring yourself back to yourself and make that choice to feel that deep, calm, safe, secure version of you, to then get back into that driver's seat and let that part be the active one, and then go from there?
I do less. I stopped putting so many things on my schedule, because the short answer is time. Putting time toward the things that I have found make me feel that essence. So accessing my Akashic Records, or really this pathway to a like an augmented consciousness, is essentially like being able to access through whatever your practice is, whatever that pathway is, that lets you get into that state of awareness, that observer awareness, but also accessing the greater part of your own consciousness, your own intelligence. And I think through what Edgar Cayce talked about, the collective conscious, information that's beyond just what you would know. And using that for insights for myself is what I mean when I talk about the Akashic Records. Because what it does is it allows me to step aside the me that's got like all the worries, all the fears, all the judgments, all the programming, to step off that for a moment and be in a full loving view of myself, and in a full supportive mindset of myself, and relax. And that relaxation state, combined with the way I've learned to access, really does give me insights and valuable self-coaching and just clarity. A lot of things just fall away when I'm in those states. So why I said time is because but I have to be able to make the time to do that, to sit down for that 2.5, 3 minutes that I need to do to walk myself through the process. And
What is that process?
I call it the pathway to peace. It's something I developed through a coursework through Helen Bonderheide to learn how to access my unique source consciousness and other, that sounds really out there, but dimensions, like other dimensions and beings that kind of help me. That sounds really out there. I don't even want to say that, but
it's valid. I mean, I think it's one of those things too. It's like experientially, once you've experienced that,
yeah,
then it doesn't sound out there, but there aren't words that you can put towards it that don't sound out there. But the experience of it doesn't feel out there.
No, it's so fucking helpful. Like last night, I took the time to access through the pathway to peace. It's just some words I say, a relaxation and a visualization that I use to put my body, brain, and awareness in sync. My intention for doing that was to try to organize my schedule, my calendar, how I want to go about being in a rhythm of a day, so that I can be productive, but be aligned while being in production of something that needs to get done. I got to make some money. I got to, take care of household stuff. I got to take care of body stuff, like things I really want and do, but I've been struggling. So I took 15 minutes and I put myself into that state and received tailored information that's coming through me, for me, with me, by me, to organize what that rhythm could look like, and definitions of what categories certain activities would fall in, so the context made sense to me, so that when I go to do work for the nonprofit that I'm going to go do, that it doesn't feel, I don't have resistance to it, because I'm like, oh, that's my creativity work. And what creativity means is me being in flow of giving, and then someone gives me back something like money, and that feels appropriate.
And would you say that interaction and that time you took with yourself, that information and the organization that you gain in those processes of how to go about your day and how to organize it mentally, would you say that came from your higher self, or where is that coming from, essentially, do you feel?
At this point, because I've been doing this a long time, it feels like it's coming from me. Why I say that is what I define as me is myself and the collective energies that I have access to that are beyond just my singular brain and body. But that is me, because consciousness to me is singular when focused. Like I have a singular consciousness that I call me. I have this house, I have that husband, I have this way of this sister, this way of thinking and believing, and this orientation to the world, these set of beliefs. And that's consciousness. And I use that consciousness, I use that to open up. And that same consciousness, that same singular is connected to a broader, wider, older sense of me.
And do you think that's true for everybody?
My perception is that it is possible for everybody, but I don't think that's the one truth. Because if someone doesn't believe that, why would they even bother accessing that? Why would they even be if it's an atheist, it's like, no, that's not the truth. So I have a lot of respect for it not being the one.
I don't know about that though, because I mean, an atheist doesn't believe in God. And if you're saying this is you're just accessing more consciousness, that's just more awareness.
Part of me does feel there's a split between spirituality and cognition and brain function. Part of me believes, no, I am absolutely accessing the Akashic Records, the collective energy field, my ancestors, my relations, Palladian light beings. That is what I've come to understand. But there's also a very equal part of me that is like, no, I think that I put my brain waves into theta, and that has an effect on me being able to access more information in my brain that is picking up on all of these details of life that my singular awareness that's just in regular alpha beta waves cannot. It's like when you go into like your subconscious when you get into, is it sleeping waves is delta? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it is delta.
So delta, you go into sleeping and you have access to subconscious through imagery and things, and that's your dreams, right? And you can like use that. Some people use that to make a lot of sense out of things. But either way, there's a process happening in your brain that is making you see shit that isn't there, see or experience rather things that are in there. And for me, I think there's a big component of that feels and knows. I am simultaneously putting my brain waves and brain and body into a position that has a greater access. I simultaneously believe that access has to do with unseen realms that are there to support you spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
But to get back on point, what you were asking before is like, how do I move into beingness? I had to stop doing so much so I could raise the possibility and probability that I could have a chance to make more space for beingness. That's been very hard. And I have to say it's like a privilege to be able to do it because I had a support system where I didn't go broke if I stopped doing all the things. And that's a privilege. I honor that and use it the best I can at this time, the resource of that to be able to do that. So it was so needed because I couldn't keep going the other way.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going to actually create the life or have me be the person I want in the life that I have.
Thanks for sharing, Cheech.
Yeah.
Last question though, that process that you've developed for yourself, are you going to share that process? Is that something you're able to teach others how to do? Like I know I had asked you to help me create an invocation for myself for when I'm doing like tarot work and just access and connection.
I do have intentions of teaching actually probably this month, like a beta group, because I went through a teacher training course that I both learned how to develop the process for myself that was individual and tailored for what I would need and what I would be accessing. But it was a teacher training course, so I learned how to teach others. And I feel like the reason why I got drawn to that work was because it's so fundamentally fucking important, I think, for agency and for people just to have their own ability to access, like cut out the fucking middleman.
Yeah, you don't need to go to somebody and pay them to do it. Like you,
just,
which is kind of funny because you'll probably charge.
It is ironic, but for me, it was more of a sustainable model because it's like teach a person how to fish and
Right.
they'll feed themselves for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
To me, that's what the gift of that Helen Vonderheide, the teacher I went to and who set up this teacher training, was giving me, was like, oh, now I don't need to rely on a different training model that I had paid money to learn how to do, which was a prayer from Linda Howe. And she runs the Center of Akashic Studies out of Chicago, was one of my first programs and teachers. I learned how to do the basics of the Akashic Records and alone, just the Akashic Records. And I felt that it was useful, but that's someone else's thing that I am learning to do. And I felt instinctually that there was something that innately would be more easy, more just readily available for me to do that was my own. And so when she offered that, I was like, oh, I'm going to take that, because then it's, how could it not be more potent and by being tailored and created, developed by me? And how can I would trust it more. And I do. And I did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I felt with the invocations that I've used. Cause I'm like, this is great, but this is somebody else's invocation that they use to access. Like, this isn't my invocation that I have my own process, but I've never put it down, and it's fluid. So it'd be nice to have something to go to and know that is a clear opening, and clear gate almost.
And we talked about in a previous episode about the power of ancient rituals and about ceremony and structure and all of that. And for me, watching other people in the class with me, the other teacher trainers, it was amazing because it really did look so specifically different. Some people don't have words. Some people's it was a song. Some people it was just a process of just internally closing their eyes and letting their body relax. Or some people it was,
whoa, that's so cool.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be words. It doesn't have to. It's going to be
a process.
It's going to be a process that allows you the access to whatever you are not meant to, in that way of like, there's some divine.
She's doing bunny ears.
some divine intervention. Oh, you're destined to. No, but I mean meant to, as in like, what is your most potent access point and source?
And we're all so different.
What is your sources? What are your resources from the unseen that are going to be most useful to you? And I tell you what, not everybody's is the Akashic Records. Everybody's was different, to be honest. And it was discovered by them. There's just a variety there. And I think that the scaling down, like they do in business, like these huge models of business are now not working. You scale down, and being able to be more sustainable in smaller ways, I think applies to individual practices of beingness and usefulness in the new age spirituality. And I think that's why it was important for interdependence, but not dependence on some other reader. And it's expensive, bro.
Yeah, I've paid a lot.
It's expensive.
We both have paid a lot.
It's expensive to go to a reader. I'm like on the cheaper end when I do Akashic Record sessions and clarity coaching. I charge $180 an hour or $120 for 1 hour of clarity coaching. And that's a lot of money still, and it's relative to everyone. I just mean out of respect to people's hard-earned dollars, that can be a lot. My point is that if you can give this to yourself, and that way the money isn't the barrier. That's because I found the value of me being able just to access for myself or exchange with another person so that I could get external viewpoints on it, but that I had the ability to exchange and I didn't have to pay for it. And that for if that's your spiritual jam or the practical jam that you need, for support and resources, I do think it's helpful to have it just be in your own sense of your own house and your own body.
That's awesome that you did that for yourself. Obviously, the Akasha has clearly helped you to get back into center. But to have that process that's even more tailored, it seems like you're able to really help yourself on a new level, which is important. Talk about like self-help. It's such a big commodified industry. But that the essence of it, to be able to sit down and have tools and be like, I can help myself through this. I can guide myself, and it helps to cut down the chances of being manipulated, of being misled, of being taken advantage of someone saying they know the only way, and then you believing that, and then getting lost off your true authentic values. It definitely can cut down on that. I definitely stand with that. You have the answers to everything.
like each individual person can have their own.
It's all within us.
It's all with, Let's break. But I do want to come back and talk to you about this thing you just mentioned of the industry of self-help.
And I'd love to touch on balance. That's something that I'm really working on, and community, and just more change.
So let's regroup and come back.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Okay, I think we did it. Listen, I don't know what we did, but we did it. Look, unattainable ideals are overrated. We're way more connected and deserving than society's false sense of separation dictates us to be. You're not just one person. You're enough. Your effort is enough, and change is possible. Question the standard that says otherwise, because what if almost is good enough? Just by tuning in, you're a part of our clan. Not in a culty way, though. We don't know how far this ripple can go, but we're going to keep showing up. And we'll never get to perfection, but we're all going to be okay if we let the process be the solution and we see the value in the attempt.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Ripple Affect. We're looking forward to exploring a different facet of change with you next Tuesday. Same time, same place, next week.
For show notes and additional resources, check out our website at rippleeffectpod.com. That's affect with an A. Chiara has worked diligently to make our website interactive. Please visit it so it wasn't all for nothing. In all seriousness, though, there's a ton of resources there. DM us directly at Ripple Effect Pod on Instagram and let us know what you liked about our show or any of your own ideas. We're really excited to hear from you. We value your feedback because it helps us make the pod better, and it's our way of including you in our process.
Okay, so ratings aren't the point of why we do this. We really want to make a change in the world. But in the Matrix, there are algorithms. So every single review we get helps the ripple go farther. To help us out, please take 2 seconds, find the ratings and review section on whatever platform you're listening from, click 5 stars, wink, wink, and leave a review. We know you're busy, so just saying hello or literally hi as the review helps us hack the Matrix. We sincerely appreciate it. If you want to become officially initiated into our clan, again, not in a culty way, hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. And as always, we're in it with you. Keep questioning. Stay curious. You got this, clan.
A special thank you, love, and credit to the magnificent Mia Casasanta for this beautiful music you're listening to right now.